Start the next session. I call upon Professor Balasubramaniam to please chair the session.
The next lecture will be given by Dr. Ramasami, and I assume that most of you know him and he does not need an introduction. And he has been a well-wisher and a friend of this institute for a long time. He has been a well-wisher and a friend, and once he told me that, how can I not be a friend with an institute which has all my good friends like Balu, Bhaskar and Simon and so on and so forth. That was when he was the director of CLRI. And then our friend moved to DST as the secretary. And it is at this time, that under the business of allocations, under allocation of business, the mathematics and nuclear sciences are under DIA and only every other science is under the DST. And Dr. Ramasami did not like it. And in fact, he even entered into an agreement in his period when he was a DST secretary with the DAE chairman, and it started at the time of Kakorkar, and I think the MOU took place when Dr. Banerjee was the chairman. That DST also would equally contribute for mathematics. Under that thing, actually later NBHM and SCRB also entered into an agreement under that umbrella agreement. And one of the things which I should remember is when we conducted this international mathematics thing in Hyderabad in 2010, the major money for the main program came from the DAE, but in all such things, one has to have also satellite conferences. And the money for all the satellite conferences were provided by the DST. And Ramasami was generous enough to organize around 40 satellite conferences. Therefore, he has been always a lover of mathematics and had been always thinking of how he can help mathematics. And therefore, it's high time that, he is the best person to talk on the mathematics things today. You can go.
Very good afternoon. I join every one of you in paying our respects to the contributions of Alladi. Nelson said there is always the worry of his friends because he knows how to deal with enemies. When they told me that Balu is going to be the chairman of this session, I was a little nervous because he knows too many of my secrets. And thank you, Balu, for recalling something. The chief guest in the morning was saying that he is ill-fitted for this function. I think I used to be considered a shoemaker of this country. And I know about these ill-fitted shoes. And I think the most ill-fitted person, as a person, is Ramasami for this conference. And Vishwanath wrote to me saying, I can give a science lecture or I can talk about the landscape. Either I will talk about science, not science. So what I'm going to do today is to share with you a perspective of the Indian science changing landscape, but reference to the time of Alladi. Because I think it is essential that we look at the total map of not just math science, but the country's landscape as it changes from the time of Alladi. I think in commemoration of the centenary, you look at it, we should remember all the founder fathers. And I believe Alladi is the founder father for not only this institute, but the sciences he represented. And I was telling somebody in the press in the morning that knowledge for its own beauty, knowledge for its own sake, is a priority in many societies, but mostly with the people who did not suffer the resource crunch and problems of the belly. And it turned out that in the time of Alladi, the problem of the belly was a problem of India. Therefore, I think the reasons as to why art and science prospered in Tanjavur or Tirunelveli is because of Kaveri. Therefore, similarly, when you are looking at this time, we must remember the context in which Alladi's work took place in this country at the times of limited resource. And On this day, I also have to point out to you, 2022 happened to be a new year for me personally, because 4 of my friends of Chennai became centenarians. Dr. Naidamma, Dr. Radha, Dr. B. Ramamurthy, and GNR. So we organized a centenary, brought under DST, a system to celebrate the centenarians of the year. And last up to 6 people, and we had this inaugurated in Delhi in Vigyan Bhavan with Vice President of India. Then we decided that we'll do it every year. And it turned out in 1923 was a very special year for this country. The 23 fellows of the Indian Academy of Sciences were born in 1923. By coincidence, I did not make up the 23. The 23, you can check this out in the alumni book. So 23 people happened to be, and that was one of them is Alladi Ramakrishnan. And among the 23 centenarians, 8 were associated with the city of Chennai. And that is again very special. And you can see among these 8 are Daniel, R.K. Ramachandran, Alladi Ramakrishnan, G.S. Ramasami, Dr. Shantappa, Swaminathan. There were the 8 of them. So it so happened that this year also we started this for 23 somewhere at the national space. And on this occasion, last week something was done for Arcad. And it's good to have such a memory being recalled. Not for the pleasing somebody because they're all gone, but for ourselves to tell, and the question of emulation process happens. I think I present this as a homage to the contributor Alladi Ramakrishnan. And looking at it in terms of the landscape of these processes, the science landscape globally is changing too, not only here. You're looking at this initial process, 1923-42, because I pick up 23 happened the birth year of Alladi. And focus was on excellence. Excellence was the theme of what we do. And discovery is what was driving. And it was individualistic. Most of the science done in those periods of time was not done through institutions. It was a personal passion, pursuit of passions. And that was the passion-driven process. And I think Alladi belonged to that piece of an era where the discovery was the most dominant process. Looking at it in terms of 63-82, along with it comes the relevance. Not just excellence, but relevance became important. And this question of groundbreaking research, not just discovery, but beyond that process became significant. And there was a certain amount of group endeavors became relevant in those processes. And the visitor program is, to me, is a part of the group endeavor. It is not just an individual pursuit. And knowledge, culmination, synthesis takes place in the group endeavor. Looking at it in 2003-22, relevance converted to convergence. Convergence where we are looking at technological solutions to problems and not just discovery. Knowledge for its own beauty is relevant, is important to the individuals and institutions, but national space looks for solutions to societal problems and so on. Therefore, it becomes a national endeavor. So the reason I now share with you is how the science is being done today as a national endeavor, not just an institutional and an individual process, because a job that I had in Delhi, I used to say, I started as a technologist. I had a BTech degree. It so happened, I joined the AC College in 64, the year in which people moved here. So I was part of this history of development of this institution. And math science used to be my hiding ground when I was young. When I get disappointed with something in CLR, I used to come away here and hide. And therefore, I have too many friends. But looking at it in the space in which we are today, the landscape is changing across the world in science. And I look at, when the technologists found me not good, they threw me out, I became a chemist. When the chemist threw me out, I became a bureaucrat. So I will now present a bureaucrat's way of looking at science at global space. Look at the year 1920, Nobel Prize in Physics. Look at the year 1930 in physics. The underscore is his work, individual contributions, and for his work, for his researchers. Look at the Nobel Prize recognitions in 2012, groundbreaking experimental methods, groundbreaking experiments. And you're looking at the groups. So, world at large is not only in physics. It is true of many forms of science. And I can go on this process. But since the times of Alladi, individual excellence remained focused in the times of Alladi in the world at large. At that time, individuals in this country were as good as individuals elsewhere, and we were not far lagging. There came a time when institutional excellence became the norm in the intervening year. Now, there is a one-upmanship, the power equations of the world. Nations want to be counted big. So the innovation has become the mantra, and everybody wants innovation without even understanding what innovation is. But that's what, and several nation states are investing in innovations, primarily buying to in this process, they become, believe, one of the leaders of the world. Now to a point, there are artificial intelligence. God gave intelligence, but they have not decided to have an artificial intelligence. I hope that it is not to minimize the role of the individual. Therefore, in shaping the landscape of the world is changing at the world at large. And we need to ask a question, is India at least in the right direction? We cannot talk about getting this prize, that prize, that's a bigger issue. But the question of are we moving in the right direction is what I try to present today. Changing Indian science landscape, I think we must remember individual efforts are very important for the individuals and the institutions. But for nation, especially an aspiring nation with a lot of young people, I think we need to ask the question, how do we scale? We need to scale the efforts as well for a country at large as this. You look at the pre-1947, the number of institutions we had. These were the institutions created, IMD, Survey of India, all these were done. Survey of India was established 270 years ago by the British for them to know the resources so they can take it back to England. So it was to serve the process, IMD. But IACS was a part of a national struggle, freedom struggle. And therefore, they were always fighting, even now they're fighting. That's a process because the cultural DNA carries this fighting process. Bose Institute. So all these are institutions which are created in a certain process, but very few. Looking at the number, 1921, the total number of universities in this country was 13. And total number of colleges in this country, 220. Total number of people studying in higher education is 59,600. And of them, 47 were arts and science. Therefore, this was the story of India in 1921. You look at 100 years later, in 22, we have 42,000 colleges, 956 universities, 159 of national importance, 9 science departments, 580. And when I went to Delhi, the total number of full-time equivalent of scientists was 134,000. And we were saying, compare China, compare America. America had 14.7 lakhs. China had 22 lakhs. And with the 22 lakh scientists manpower, with 1.34, you can't go, you don't talk in competitions. Therefore, the expansion took place, and now today we are 3.3. Something has happened in the country, which I'd like to present to you. Today, the number of students studying in colleges in this country, higher education, is 4.1 crore. This was the year when I went to Delhi, the number of children who passed school final was 35 lakhs. 8% went to college. Because I did all this for that design the Inspire scheme. Today, the number of children who pass school final is 1.7 crores. And 26% go to college. And Tamil Nadu, 53% go to college. Therefore, enrollment has changed. The reason I'm going to give this comment, I'm a chemist. We know the kinetic theory of gases. When expansion takes place, quality will suffer. Volume will decrease. I think you can't have both. So, I think pre-47, the science transitional process benefited the rulers, not the people. So, establishing infrastructure, founding agencies, what is important 2003 and 22, aspirational change for growth. And that all happened when India had some small money to spend. And this is the economic liberalization had to happen in 91. And therefore, you're looking at scaling up R&D investments, all that happened. It so happened that science policy talked about India becoming top 5 nations in knowledge power. This was, national policies came up in the process, and I'd like to present to you a national education policy profile that happens. If you're looking at it, in 1968, first policy, the radical restructuring. There's a social integration, removal of disparities and provide equitable opportunities. In a very divisive society, non-monolithic society, pluralistic social system, these are important. So basically, the educational policies were based on bridging the divides. So these are the founding principles, and these are the times of Alladi, people like Alladi. To get into that places where the bridging divide is a priority, to build an institution of this nature, okay, to build excellence is a tall task. And we must understand the kind of birth pangs the institutions of this kind would have gone through during those periods of time. But the social dynamics is crucial. Now, you're looking at this in terms of 2020 policy, optimize learning for students based on cognitive development of children. This is NAP 2020. What's the priority? First time they're putting learner focused. It's not society's divides problems. And standard harmonization. So these are the directions of policy changes that happen. And I like to present to you the time of science policies. India, the first country among the developing countries, set up a scientific policy resolution in 1958. This 1958 scientific policy resolution is ahead of the formation of National Science Foundation in the United States. Okay? And it is an articulation of a principle, laying the foundation for science and scientific temper. It's a 1 3/4 page written by Homi Bhabha. You can't change a full stop or a comma in this. Quality universal document. But it talks about society embracing science. We know about short temper, but they talk about scientific temper. They're talking about, then it turned out we got isolated in the society. In a committee of nations, Indira Gandhi had no choice but to move into the self-reliance model. When we are denied of access to technology and moving to attaining goals, and talk about 1983's technology policy statement is about self-reliance and drafted by Minchike Menon. Indira Gandhi. Then, in 2003 policy is an ambition for science. This was truly drafted by Dr. Muralidhar Joshi, who was the Minister for Science. Increasing gross expenditure R&D. It is true that these governments talked about promoting science, but they never realized that science requires money. That investments came into this process in 2003. 2013 was essentially an aspiring nations policy. 2013, I had some role in it. I can talk about science, research, innovation in this country taking place in vertical silos. And that doesn't help. How do you build a system to where a high technology led path for India? So Indian national system came in. So if you abbreviate it, called SRISHTI, S-R-I-S, SRISHTI. Then came the 2020 policy, linked science and technology to socio-economic growth of the country. Those are investments that take place. And it turned out during this period, the 10th plan allocation of all science departments of science was to 25,000 crores. 11th plan, it went to 74,000. 12th plan went to 1,27,000 crores. And this was, all that was made available because I had reason to develop this. And therefore, times of Alladi was primarily on this space where investments were not even priority in the national policy statement. And when I went to Delhi, we set up this project. It's good the word talked about feudalism. I took this to Delhi. Before I went to Delhi, I took all these 10 principles, democratize Indian science because so much of feudalism. Bring about deep bureaucratization of R&D funding. Talk about rejuvenation of research in the university system. It turns out most of the original research of this country had been done in the university system, but it famished. Question, how do we rejuvenate? Talent performance. It is true in the Indian Academy of Sciences, said children are not coming to study science anymore. We talked about having a priority. Inspire was a scheme created. I put 4,400 crores in the Inspire scheme, and that was a talent punishment. Globalization of R&D, where we talk about reciprocity and parity. And we increased the allocation for international cooperation from 16 crore to 160 crores in my own department. So, popularization of Indian science, gender parity in science, facilitates social contract of science, technology as solutions, and science to startups. All these were done, and it's a kind of, we move from patronage to right, create an ant of parliament, because it so happened, if money has to come from the government kitty, it has to, all the rules of the government apply. But science requires certain functional autonomy. The only authority in a democracy that can give that authorization is parliament. So we got a special act for deep bureaucratic R&D funding, so that it doesn't have to go through what you call IFD approvals. The Department of Science gives 18,000 approvals a year and 12 signatures for 18,000. We remerged all that. We converted to a single signature. These are aspects that happen, and these are, I brought on 74 schemes in the government at the Department of Science, and many of them are working, and it's continued beyond that. If you take democratization process, they have really moved up in the manner in which Science, Technology, Innovation Policy 2020 was drafted was a consensus process, fully drafted. They have now moved away from the SCRB into National Research Foundation, which is supposed to give industry also participate in the process. They have converted into, I had something called PERS, Promotion of Research in Scientific Excellence, PERS, which is based on performance being rewarded without their applying it. So we gave that 1,480 crores during my time to universities without them have to make a single application based on the past performance. It turns out that this particular government also has continued along that processes. The governments have changed, but the support to science had remained somewhat rooted in the process. Having said all this, you are going to ask me, Arey, you are saying all this, do we see any benefit from this? Because I myself was responsible, I have spent about 38,000 crores of the public taxpayers' money in the department. One would ask a question, I have to account over the people. So I like to give you a trend, not the data. Gross enrollment ratios in higher enrollment, increase in full-time equivalent in R&D sector, number of authors publishing papers in ISI publications, Web of Science publications, university R&D rejuvenation, number of publications in peer-valued journals, a rise in the essential science index base, essentially highly cited papers and kind of hot papers in the world, and improving competitiveness, patent activities, and startup ecosystems. These are the areas in which money were invested as a national space. Now, this is the gross enrollment ratio in India, number of people growing. You can see the change took place. Don't worry about the natural number. The trends will show you how changes take place. And this is a gross enrollment ratio. What was an 8% is now 27%. And Tamil Nadu is 53%. In terms of gross enrollment ratio to higher education, Tamil Nadu is ahead of the United States. That has happened. This is the number of full-time scientists, which was 1.34. It's so I used to say, R&D intensity of a nation is measured by two parameters. One is what percentage of the GDP is invested into science, and number of full-time equivalent scientists per million population. It turned out that when I made a presentation to the governor at that time, I said that only country which has lower number of scientists per million population is a one to which we don't want to lose our cricket matches. It was very low, 134. It moved up. The directions have changed. These are the number of papers and authors. Authors publishing in Web of Science index journals. It has been a certain growth rates, and that is how the full-time equivalent unleashed the latent potential in the country. That's a principle that we adopted. And this is the number of papers published by 28 universities only. Picked up 28 top universities. If you go on the process, you can see the change in the direction. These are the H index and number of papers published. That it so happened the PERS was a scheme that the department generated, not from the request of the university. We said, but we take the 2006 data of India's publication base and look at in the 10 years, how many institutions contributed 50% of the total publications of the country? 35. How many universities? 14. Or invite all the 14 and give them a reward money, incentive money to do research on their own, and ensure there is no government prescription of how to use the money. The university has the freedom to come back and say how they want to break the money. Only condition, you can't use it for a building because building doesn't provide the return quickly. And we said one IIT had H index above 50 at that time. So university had H index above 50 got 30 crores for 3 years. University between 40 to 49 got 15 crores. 30 to 39 got 9 crores. 20 to 29 got 6 crores. 2 years later, when I took the 98, 2008, the 14 had become 41. 2 years later, 2000, 2010 become 61. Today, the number of institutions will contribute to 50% of India's publications. I update it every month. I have no work to do. I do all this. And it turns out there are 153 institutions contributing to 50% of India's publications. Just 35 before. I take a 10-year aggregate. And 91 are universities. And what it conveys to you, the changes happened. These are only 3 universities H index above 50. And today, you can see there are 3 universities above 200. And 100 to 199, 23 universities. And the total number of things above 50 is something like 71 or something, 26, 62. What it conveys to you, the small recognition, small public recognitions and resources with the freedom for them to spend, the level of bureaucratization reduced. I can't say eliminated, reduced. Helps. That has happened in the university system. And looking at it in terms of the rise of activities with respect to countries, you can see we invested in the start of the millennium some small amounts, and peer value journals increase in terms of trends have changed. These are 2 databases. This is the Scopus database. This is Web of Science database. And looking at it, 2 databases provided. And it turns out in 2000, we were 2003 actually, 15th rank, and today we are 3rd. As a country, we moved up to a 3rd position in this one database, 5th in another database. Then we asked the question, what about these citations? It's interesting. There's a paper appeared in Nature yesterday or day yesterday that India is now become 3rd in number of publications, but the number of citations, uncited paper, India is 30%, and China and US is only 20%. This is a Nature paper. Truly, people who start publishing new, they cannot go to the highly cited journals. It's a cultivation, parent habits have changed. So we don't know how to celebrate problems. We have a tendency to celebrate problems. There are problems, let's accept the problem and look for solutions. We cannot celebrate the problems. And that's what we have. What we have done is here is a group of nations. India had 0 in the highly ESI database in 2004. And what we have done to liberate them into terms of international cooperation, the research program and those kind of stuff done, you can see in 2022, India is 3rd. In terms of highly cited paper, Web of Science. ESI database, all public databases. Therefore, if you have access to this, you can verify them. Therefore, and these are how different nations have performed in terms of scope of database. These are with respect to Web of Science. And I have left out other states because we are close to the 2 countries that are ahead of us, China and the US. And the reason they are not brought in because the scales are different. Otherwise, you won't be able to see the difference. So I would say in pre-independence, when individual excellence was a global benchmark, there were individuals who scaled great heights. Raman was, in fact, what I would say, J.C. Bose was done unfair treatment by the world because he discovered radio before Marconi. His Nobel Prize was not given. It's not because the quality was not there. It was denied. Your prize denied to Mahatma Gandhi cannot be worth calling the Peace Prize afterwards. Therefore, we must be careful about our price-oriented analysis. And in terms of research was primarily passion-driven activity, endowed. In fact, in my opinion, because I grew up at a time when J.N. Raman was doing his science in this city, I believe J.N.R. deserved the prize. Okay? Certainly deserved the prize. And that's why we wrote the prize which must miss the master. It was D. Balu, a prize that missed the master. So the post-independence, resource-intense models of R&D with group dynamics and global landscape, and India started languishing. And in 21st century, we scaled up. And in quantum, we have gained some strength. In quality, we have a long way to go. We have to have. Now what I've done, I've taken discipline-wise and looking at in terms of relative ranks. In chemistry, we were from 10th to 3rd, physics 11th to 4th, biology 20th to 9th, mathematics, biology is resource intensive, and mathematics 13th to 5th, now I take back. Engineering 12th to 3rd, material science 9th to 3rd. And you're looking at it in terms of growth, I did not certainly articulate, but I have to underscore it because Mathematics Institute, I need to come back and show that something has happened in this period of time, taking 2 reference periods and show in terms of growth profile, mathematics has grown. But somebody in chemistry will say, oh, the base was low. So you can have a higher base. Because chemistry fellows will say, we have larger base and therefore the growth can be lower. Whereas chemists in this country have a tendency to proliferate. I'm one of them. So, we look at innovation, startup have become new mantra. India is focusing on affordable innovations and fundamentally, Covaxin is one area. This is a patent profile. In terms of the startup, we have done well. We become one of the largest startup nations systems in the world. We can ask the question, is India doing enough to build institutional excellence? We're talking about national endeavor, institutional excellence. And I would say excellence about surpassing. By definition, excellence to surpass. So you can surpass other institutions at a particular time. That's one way of relative measurement. So India has introduced NIR of systems and the people manipulate their NIR of ranking in my own ways, in my opinion, but that's a different matter. But there's another way of getting excellence. Improve upon your own past record. A perpetual state of improvement on oneself. Jesu Gandhi adopted that principle, and therefore, you're looking at various models in the socio-cultural context, you might want to have a perpetual state of improvement on oneself, excel over yourself. It's a model which I believe is math science. I individually did. If you look at it in terms of universities, you look at 2 reference periods, you can see university sector moved up, IITs moved up. CSIR and ICR have gone with respect to their own process down, but that's because they moved into the translational research, not so much in publication base. This is with respect to computer science and mathematics in terms of ranking of nations. India's position, more in the process in terms of relative measurements. So you can see in computer science we have done well in terms of ranking, and mathematics we improved as well. India moved from 16th to 3rd in computer science in the last 20 years. This is with respect to the mathematical science. This is IMSC's database, which I have sourced from Web of Science, not from Aravind. And somehow this number changed fairly sharp, which is good news. And I think you people know about mathematical sciences, and I don't want to talk about your performance on your own. But this is for the people who are, as a neutral observer from elsewhere, I think these are good, directional change are pretty good. Looking at it in terms of the intense activity, in recent times, multidisciplinary activity is changing because originally it is known for the theoretical physics and mathematics. Now we have computational biology and systems. So what I've done also is to look at the multidisciplinary directions. So what it conveys you from 2006 onwards, there's a diversification which happens in the research pursuit. See, the advantage of math science to me, small size. Homogeneity. When you have a very large bodies, there will be so much heterogeneity. Homogeneity, small size, and the unity of purpose. Everybody want to put to unity of purpose, and economy of scope, and to excel dynamically. That's a trademark that you have, and therefore, math science could earn a very special place in Indian science landscape. I mean, I talked about India as a whole, but I think you can carve out something for yourself. I will skip this. It's a bigger process. I reached a time. In summary, I would say credible arguments were advanced that early initiatives laid foundational principles like Alladi's. Have successive governments through leaders in science like Alladi. Several photographs that Dr. Alladi Krishnaswamy showed today. You can see Bhaktavatsala, Subramaniam, Venkatraman. That is an expression of political will. That's what summary of political will. They may not have given you money, but political will. Nehru was sitting there. And it so happened the later part of Subramaniam's life, I was his closest contact in the process. Every month he used to call me and what's happening in Indian science. I was the director of CLRA. I used to go there. Somehow, math science was a big place in his heart. You'll talk about how is math science doing. And today, I see the photographs, I know where that all came from. And it turns out, Subramaniam is the first science minister of India. Until sixth plan, there was no budget allocation for science in the country. The first allocation for science was made by Subramaniam, 4 crores. Sixth plan. And now, the later people, they are building a viable superstructure for Indian higher education and responsible research innovation system. And that's what's happening today. Today, science policy of the world is decided by responsible innovation. That's what they're talking about, not social contract metaphor. So evidence for accelerated developments in sector has been presented. I believe that I have presented some evidence which are verifiable. And the position of India in global system with input volume space, she still remains a fringe player. More is needed from the Indian researchers for the nation gaining her rightful place. And 2 modes of excellence were presented, outperforming over self. I believe Raman presented one example of excellence. Gandhi presented another example for excellence, improving upon herself. And I believe math science should take the Gandhi model. Improve upon yourself, don't compare with anybody else. And I would like to quote, in this case, Tagore. The tendency in modern civilization is to make the world uniform, standardization. Okay? ISO, you name all that system. Let the mind be universal. Let the individual not be sacrificed. And what Tagore says, let the individual strength of math science not be sacrificed. It's the true of individual. Uniformity has its own value, but then has a problem. And I have said, this is not my quote, education system in the Indian ancient wisdom is to reveal internal perfection. The purpose of education is to reveal internal perfection to oneself. It is the Western world, theory of anomy. Man is born lawless, and education makes him law-abiding. I think we came from a civilization which, according to Tagore, all modern civilizations met the cradles in this brick and mortar. It was in the forest that civilization took its birth. It took distinctive character from this origin environment. I believe IMSC had to retain that individual research, higher education. Small is beautiful, and nimble structure provides mobility and autonomy. And I believe long live Institute of Science. Mathematics. Institute of Mathematical Sciences. Thank you very much. Sorry. I overstepped by a few minutes. Thank you, Paul. No, not because of that. Not because of that. I also, thank you very much.
So, a small memento to thank Professor Ramasami.
Thank you.